I was wondering this week what it would be like if I stood up here and spoke for 25 hours straight. Oh, you think so? Okay. Pledge drive goal. I like that. So maybe if you get to the pledge drive, I'll just keep talking until we get there. Yeah, right. What'd you say? What'd you say, Karen? We raise money to have me stop. Exactly. So I can't believe this. If you didn't hear, New Jersey Senator Cory Booker gave a 25-hour speech in Congress this week as a sort of protest, what the late Representative John Lewis called good trouble, to bring attention to what's happening in our country and our government. And lucky for you, I'm not going to talk for 25 hours. I mean, I certainly couldn't do that. I think most of us couldn't. Alexa says that Z believes in me, which doesn't seem like it's going to happen. I think I would need more preparation before now. Let's just say that. But evidently there's a lot to say. Now, I haven't watched the whole thing. I don't have 25 hours. But I hear he spoke to the crisis, which is this moment. And I'm going to posit today that this crisis is about equity. What is equity? We aren't talking about shares in a company, though that's certainly related, or financial equity in terms of what you have invested in your house, if you're lucky enough to own one. But again, perhaps it's also related. We're talking about what one might call social equity, the quality of being fair or impartial. After all, we declare that every person is inherently worthy and has the right to flourish with dignity, love, and compassion. That's the wording of our Unitarian Universalist value of equity, one that's one of the core values of the UU faith, the others being interdependence, pluralism, justice, transformation, and generosity. These values which unite our congregations and guide us in the work that we must do to create a world where love is at the center. I like our definition of equity better than the one about being fair, because often we think of fair as equal. My kids will get upset. That's not fair, they'll say. Is my kid still here? She left? Okay, I didn't think she was going to be here. Anyhow. But we tell our kids that they don't get what's equal, they get what they'll need, which isn't always the same. My older kid used to complain that I only helped my younger kid get dressed. He did this when he was about 6 years old and the younger one was 2. And I would say, because you can get dressed. Would you like to take a nap like she does? He'd end that line of questioning pretty quickly. But that's the point of equity. A younger child needs help getting dressed, whereas an older child doesn't. Right? That's not equal, but it's equitable. Another example of equity, as you might have seen, is the meme, if you'll put up the slide, Nick. Right? Who here has seen this meme before? Most of us. It shows 3 people watching a baseball game, and there's a fence in front of them, and the 3 people are different heights, and only one person can see over the fence in the first picture, where they each are given a box, right? That's equality. Nobody has more than anyone else, except that only one of them can see. The second part of the picture shows the 2 shorter people have boxes to stand on, that brings them up to being able to see the baseball game, right? So all the correct height. That's equity. Giving each person what they need to be able to access whatever the thing is. The tall person does not need a box to stand on. So as a short person, I deeply feel this meme. It reminds me of a German art experiment that I heard about called a same heights party. I have another slide for that one. Okay, so I'm not sure if you can see this, but participants wore special platform shoes that made them all exactly 2 meters tall. That's 6'5" for you Americans. So it brought everyone to the same eye level as each other, which I frankly love this idea. It feels like bringing a sense of equity, that I don't often feel in interpersonal relationships where I usually have to look up at other adults. Many studies have shown that tall people are more likely to be experienced as leaders. They even, on average, earn more than shorter people. In fact, I've often wondered if the height of this pulpit here might be part of why you all listen to me. I even asked my wife if she was, sorry, we're all now looking at her, if she was okay dating such a short man. I'm 5'2". And, this, not to be too heterosexual about it, but there's that stereotype that women prefer taller men, right? She told me that she actually preferred it because we're at eye level, right? Felt more equitable to her. So there's something to be said for this equity in relationships that you might have at this same heights party. Now, of course, heightism isn't really the greatest threat to equity in our world right now. But it's an easily seen demonstration of what equity looks like. And though some may say that those with the higher shoes at this same heights party are getting something extra, I'd argue that they're actually still at a disadvantage. They are more likely to fall and have to figure out how to navigate walking in those shoes. Furthermore, what about people who can't walk or stand? They are completely excluded from this party. If you extend this metaphor to something like food stamps, for example, you realize that those who need them, you might think that those who need them are getting something extra that others aren't. But they're still at a disadvantage, right? They're limited to only what they're allowed to purchase on food stamps and hope that it fits with what they can and should eat. Food stamps are something that's trying to achieve equity. So I think you get the general point. And yet, equity has become a bad word in our country. Do you know what the E in DEI stands for? Equity. The Trump administration claims that, among other things, equity constitutes illegal discrimination. Do they mean that they want to remove the blocks under those who cannot see? It certainly seems like it. So what does equity look like in our world? I want to talk about why we have equity as a religious value, as Unitarian Universalists. And there are a few things that relate to how this is related to our theological history. One is that we Unitarian Universalists come from two Christian denominations, one being the Unitarians, who didn't believe in the Christian Trinity, as in they believed in one God, but not that Jesus was God. And then, of course, there were the Universalists, who are the spiritual ancestors of this congregation, who believed that all people were ultimately saved to go to heaven and be reunited with Jesus. We also hold a strong tie to the tradition of humanism, and particularly the humanism that became popular in the early 20th century that envisioned a world where humans could be good without God. All of these traditions have precursors to this idea of the inherent worth and dignity of all people. In the Christian tradition, Imago Dei is a concept that means humans were created in God's likeness and imbued with a special dignity. Therefore, our tradition also holds this to be true, despite not agreeing on what or who God is. Our Unitarian ancestors, I'm struggling this morning, apparently. Our Unitarian ancestors believed that Jesus was a great man, a prophet even, but not God. And, well, if you don't believe that the most important person in your Christian religion isn't God, then it follows that perhaps all other people are equally important. Perhaps most poignantly, the Universalists and their belief that all would be saved is the closest we have to envisioning a world with equity. They saw a world where no matter who you were loved by a loving God, who would not damn anyone to hell for eternity, a concept known as universal salvation, because all would be saved. I like to think of a modern-day Unitarian Universalism which includes people who are more concerned with what happens in this life than any possible next. We think about them as thinking about what it would mean to create that universal salvation here on earth, where all are able to be saved in this life, where everyone has the right not only to dignity, but to flourish as their best selves, something we need equity for. And I think it's important to mention that these Unitarians and Universalists, they were not welcomed into the rest of Christianity because of these beliefs. They were 100% seen as radical, just as a lot of our beliefs on equity are seen as radical today. So as we work towards this idea of equity, we find that we are in a crisis of equity right now in this country and our world. I noticed that Senator Cory Booker, in his 25-hour speech, outlined many things that our government is currently doing or threatening to do that would undermine equity, or that do undermine equity in this country. Cuts to Social Security that provide for those who are elderly or disabled and need that money that it provides to survive. Cuts to Medicare that provides millions with health care. And our already inequitable education system is facing even more cuts, specifically ones that deal with special education, that help children with disabilities access the same education as the rest of our children. Our immigration system that helps many who face violence in their home countries find a safe place to be is being turned against those very people. Tariffs, which you may have heard of this week, in our foreign policy, which will make necessities more expensive here, which impact those who are poor disproportionately. Environmental policy rollbacks, which ensure clean air and water, which again will disproportionately impact those who live in poor neighborhoods or communities that are largely people of color, and cuts to food banks and school food programs, which allow kids who can't get food at home to be able to focus and be present at school with a full belly. So much of what we are dealing with right now is about equity. And yet here we are, a religion, Unitarian Universalists, who have equity as one of our core values. In fact, equity is where the formal principle of Unitarian Universalism moved. Does anybody remember what the first principle used to be of Unitarian Universalism? We used to quote it all the time. Amy, you're married to me, that doesn't count. You used to work for the Unitarian Universalist Association, and you currently work there. Sorry, what, Alex? Yes, Alex. The inherent worth and dignity of all people. Good job. Give him a round of applause. It's okay. I understand. We changed our values, and you forgot them all, and that's okay. We don't mean that you have to memorize them, and that is all right. So that's right, our value of believing in the inherent worth and dignity of all people, which was one of the ones that people quoted the most, it was moved under this equity value. Equity is where we have that belief, right? So as you see, we have a principle of faith that holds that equity as core to who we are. But what do we do with that? How do we create a more equitable world? Because obviously we can't fix everything. Mr. of 24 hours of talking can't fix everything. Massive protests alone, like we saw yesterday, won't fix it either. And I don't think any of us holds that key, right? We're in unknown territory. But I can say this. If they aren't going to do DEI in schools, we damn well sure do it here. I can say that we will continue to give money. We'll give our money to food banks. And we'll show up at protests, for sure. But also in what might seem like smaller ways. By calling our representatives, I think the Social Action Team Committee today will actually have a table today, a coffee hour, to help you if you've never called a representative before, to talk to you about how to do this. Is that right, Reverend Ralph? It is right, great. You might do it in smaller ways by being part of an ICE watch team, or advocating for housing for the unhoused and so many wars. There is equity in the fight, in the ways we fight too, because we don't all have the capacity to fight in the same ways. This isn't about politics. It might seem like it is, but as Senator Booker said at the end of his speech, this is not about left and right, it's about right and wrong. This is about figuring out how we can create more equity in the world against this tide. And I know it's easy to feel mad. I certainly do. It's easy to feel hopeless and like there's too much to do and like I'm just giving you another alarm, right? Worry about equity. But moments like yesterday's rally can give us all hope that we aren't alone in this and that there are so many ways to meet this moment because nobody can do it all. And so as we work towards a more equitable world, I encourage you to take those small actions, to find hope in these masses of people, and to help one another find those ways to achieve that equity. May it be so, and let us say together, Amen. Amen.